So, Harry, we've got a lot of things to look forward to going into this next era for Doctor Who. But one thing I would like us to discuss here is the companion. Really, in all essence, how that character is going to be handled in terms of their exit. Now, you'd think that that's way too early. We can't talk about that. The character we don't even know what the character is going to be like.
Yet. Let's talk about them leaving.
Yeah, but I would like to bring this up because, in regards to companions departing, most times they just leave of their own accord, or circumstances of the plot have them leave. But there have been rare occasions in Doctor Who where companions have died, and I'd like to get your first off, get your thoughts on that. What do you think of that concept of Doctor Who companions being killed off?
I mean, it really does depend on the way the story goes and the character specifically. I think it's usually, I mean, it's going to sound quite pessimistic to be like, oh, that's a good thing. But sometimes it is a good thing. But yeah, it's case to case, isn't it? So like some characters, they just say they've had enough. Some characters get left behind. Some characters die. That's literally a quote that I've just said. That's literally what the 11th Doctor says to Rory's dad, I think. But yeah, I think it sort of, most cases of a companion leaving I like. There's a couple of occasions I don't like it when a character leaves, and we'll talk about them now. I won't like sort of spoil it for later, but it's just like when the character doesn't leave or doesn't die, like there's like an in between, and I really hate that. Because we'll get into it and I'll explain why later, but when a character dies it's poignant. When a character just leaves on their own, it could be poignant, like with Martha. But yeah, like I said, we'll get into it. But on the whole, characters dying, it can be a good thing, and it usually is. Them straight up dying is usually better than like a sort of wet exit sort of thing. That's not a phrase, but you know what I mean though. Like a sort of like, they're leaving, but it's like it doesn't really matter, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's always part of whatever is best for the story or the narrative at the time. Going into examples here, we of course we mainly talk about New Who, but for this
I
episode,
exclusively talk about New Who, because I only ever watched New Who, so yeah, it's exclusive for me.
But yeah, for this episode, I would like us to highlight some stuff from Classic Who. Some of it I'm sure you are somewhat aware of, some of it I'm sure you won't be, but I would like to highlight here some of the classic Doctor Who companions who have died during their time on the show.
Rest in
And
peace.
there's no specific. Truthfully told, I literally just went for the companions who just died. So there's no theme of how they don't count as a companion because they were only travelling for a short period of time, or they never got to see the TARDIS or anything like that. But I primarily aimed at companions who died and, for the most part, never stuck around. We never saw them again. In other words, literally death.
Yeah, that is their end.
So the first one here is actually the first ever companion to die in the show, and this was a short-lived companion called Katarina, who was a handmaiden from Troy in 1200 BC, and she briefly met the Doctor, and when he visited Troy with his companion Steven Tyler, and this was during the story arc, or the Doctor Who serial, the Daleks' Master Plan, where the Daleks were basically trying to create a super weapon, and it was like it was a famous 12-part story at the time. But
which Doctor is it?
Moving away from that, this is the first Doctor.
Oh wow, okay, that was quite early then.
Yeah, and back to the point. This companion was only in 2 stories, I believe, 2 serials, or maybe even 3. But she, for context, they were on a spaceship heading away from a planet that was infested with Daleks. And basically what happened is that she was taken hostage by a stowaway, a crazed criminal called, I think it's called Chris Criskin or something. But he basically tried kidnapped her and tried to threaten the Doctor and his companions that he would kill her unless they turned the ship around and took it to this other place where the Daleks would be. And in a moment of defiance and trying to protect her new friends, she jettisoned herself out of an airlock with the criminal.
Oh bloody hell! I can't imagine this for a first Doctor story. That's quite mad.
I know, but it happened, and it was quite a way to go.
Yeah,
And
sounds it.
yeah, and for a bit more context here, funnily enough, the reason behind the scenes wise, the reason she was killed off is because the writers at the time found it very difficult to write for a character from such an ancient period of history,
Yeah.
because she was one of those companions who didn't even know what a fork was, or
I'm
all
sure
these
they
other
had
conventions
forks
that were quite familiar.
in Troy, but yeah, I get your point. Yeah, it's difficult
Yeah,
to constantly be like, oh, this is new, this is new, this is new. That's probably why they haven't done that anytime recently. They haven't had an old companion.
I think it's something that can definitely be explored, but for the time they were doing the show, because this was still very early days of Doctor Who, like maybe like season 3 or 4.
Mm.
So yeah, I can fully understand why a writer from the '60s era would find it difficult to write a character on consistently weekly basis of a show where they'd have to basically treat the audience, or the character, literally as if they were a child.
Yeah.
I imagine that would have been very difficult for them. So that's actually why this character, who was introduced, was killed off so quickly, and in a way, it's a shame. But it
It's
left
quite funny though.
one hell of an
We
impact.
don't know what to do with this character. Fucking killer.
But yeah, be that as it may, she is still remembered in Doctor Who. She might not be, again. She's not the most notable companion, but her death is memorable. It's something that fans do continue to highlight whenever we bring up the subject of companion deaths. So again, if you're going to die, that was quite a way to go, I'd say. So the next companion, this character was actually also introduced in the same serial, the Daleks' Master Plan, and she was a character. She was a human from Earth, and who worked as an agent of SSS, the Space Security Service. So this was like
Sounds a bit
during the
Nazi. Sounds a bit Nazi-esque with the SS.
yeah. This was basically Earth defense. It wasn't anything sinister.
Okay.
But yeah, this was an organization that was around during the 41st century, and they basically were the front runner soldiers during the Dalek SSS war. And again, this was all part of this storyline with the Daleks, where they were trying to take over the universe, creating this super weapon. And this companion, who was called Sarah Kingdom, and again, her goal was that she was notable for, her goal was to defeat the Daleks. So when she meets the Doctor, she agrees to travel with him to help them stop the Daleks from creating this super weapon. This is another companion like the previous, who is only in a number of episodes, because her death is also, I would equally say, quite crazy, considering, again, the era and, this early period of Doctor Who. But what happens to her is that the Doctor is able to get his hands on the Dalek Wonder Weapon, and he turns it on, he activates it
What's
in
it
order
called?
to defeat the Daleks. The weapon is called the Time Destructor.
Oh, I thought you said the Wonder Weapon.
I might have said that by mistake, but yeah.
Wonder Weapon. Yeah, that sounds like something quite fun. Oh, it's a Wonder Weapon.
I don't know. I think that's meant to be an alternative name for one of the many weapons that Hitler allegedly tried.
I said it
during
was
his time in the war.
Nazi-esque, didn't I?
Oh yeah, there's
Always
definitely it's
cropping into
Daleks.
Doctor Who.
There's definite influence in
Yeah.
in World War histories.
It's not
But
Nazi
yeah,
pepper pots.
Yeah, but back to the point. Sorry.
Sorry, I keep
so-
dragging you off.
It's okay, mate. So yeah, the Doctor is able to get his hands on this Dalek weapon, and he activates it in an attempt to defeat the Daleks. What happens though is that Sarah, she ends up, because again, for context here, the Doctor basically ordered his companions to return to the TARDIS before he activated the weapon, and Stephen does, but Sarah doesn't because she is unsure. And again, it's been a while. I can't remember if she had an alternative reason for, but she basically comes back to help the Doctor. And of course, the Doctor's really, what are you doing? We have to get back to the TARDIS. So what happens is that the Doctor and her basically flee back to the TARDIS while the weapon is with them, and they're being pursued by the Daleks. And all around them, the planet is basically like changing because of the weapon. So the planet's dying. And what happens is that as they go on, Sarah starts to become affected by the weapon. So while the Doctor is equally getting weaker and weaker, he's also a Time Lord, so it's not affecting him. With her, though, she is aging at a rapid pace. And it ends with, quite tragically, with them just about getting to the TARDIS, and the Doctor collapses, and Sarah, in her last ounce of strength, pushes the Doctor a bit further, so he's able to get to the TARDIS, and Stephen is able to let him in. But in the cost of it all, Sarah succumbs, and she dies, crumbling to dust.
Jesus Christ. I'm just imagining Indiana Jones when the guy drinks from the Holy Grail and just becomes a skeleton. Quite horrific for Doctor Who.
I know. It's
I should watch the classics because this sounds really really quite like terrifying. I didn't expect.
You'd be surprised, mate. Classic Who, it might not be like on par with Doctor Who in a lot of ways in terms of modern storytelling, but when it is good in its own right, and again, moments like this, they definitely are memorable. Although I should warn you in advance, it is a shame that, unfortunately, this said story of Sarah's death is sadly one of the many lost episodes of Doctor Who. So there are still images that you can find, and I'm sure there's maybe Doctor Who Animation might have made an episode at one point, or maybe there's some fan test variations you can find. But yeah, this story did happen. People in the 60s did see a character on Doctor Who literally crumble to dust and die. And yeah, that story was memorable in many ways, equally so in the death of poor Sarah.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
And this is actually where it ends for a while, because again, Doctor Who is not a show like Game of Thrones, so we can't have a companion dying constantly. But this is actually where we move on to the next companion departure, tragic-wise, and this is also a big one, I'd say. Have you ever heard of the character Adric?
No. What Doctor is it with?
This was a companion of the 4th and 5th Doctor.
Oh, okay. Is she the flight attendant one?
No, that's Tegan. No. But he was a companion alongside Tegan.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so for context here, Adric was a companion who was an alien called an Alzarian, I believe that's what they're called, and he was from an alternative universe called E-Space, and because essentially there was a trilogy of stories based around the TARDIS getting sent to an alternative universe, and the Doctor and his companions Romana and K9 were trying to get out, and during that adventure they met Adric, and Adric ended up becoming a stowaway on the TARDIS. So when they finally leave the universe, he is with them. So he's left his entire universe behind, and his family too. And for a bit of context here, also during that, again, I won't go into deeper detail, but in short, in the storyline that he's introduced in, he has a family. He has a brother who he looks up to, and his brother is killed in that conflict with the story. But he ends up taking his brother's belt as to keep the memory of him alive. So back to Adric. Adric is a character who was renowned for his mathematical genius and intellect. So he was like, or you could say he was like almost at home with the Doctor. And yeah, at the time he was one of those companions that fans were up and down with, because sometimes it was due to the writing of his character, sometimes it was just because they didn't like the character. But he was a character who was notable for being with the Doctor from the point of his regeneration into his 5th incarnation, and he stuck around for the early part of the 5th Doctor's era. But what people also remember about him is his death. So what happened was that the TARDIS team were caught up during a conflict with the Cybermen during the Cyber Wars. And what happened was that a faction of Cybermen, an army of Cybermen, hijacked a human spacecraft in order to try and destroy Earth by crashing it into the planet.
So like Ultron.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened is that Adric, he had to, I think it had to use some. He had to use some form of mathematical equation or something on the ship. Again, it's science stuff, but basically, Adric it was within his skills to try and stop the ship from crashing into Earth. So he stayed behind on the freighter, while the Doctor and his other companions, were forced to board the TARDIS with the Cybermen and watch the ship crash. So Adric was trying to stop the ship from crashing. However, what no one expected would happen was that the Doctor had actually sent the ship back in time. Hello, just want to quickly acknowledge here in this brief interlude that I did get this bit wrong, misremembering and all that, and I do sort of acknowledge this later on, but yeah, the Doctor wasn't the one who sent the ship back in time, and honestly, even now I'm struggling to remember, but I just wanted to make it quickly known here that I got this bit wrong, but I decided to keep it in because the conversation is still flowing at this point, and I want to keep it natural. So I'm sorry about that, but just so you know. Again, I'm struggling to remember how he did it, but essentially, the Doctor was able to send the ship back in time, and it ended up being sent to the Cretaceous period, or the dinosaur period. Let's say that.
I can see. Where
so what happened was that, So what happened was that the Doctor had saved Earth by making sure that the freighter would become the meteor that would destroy the dinosaurs.
Wow, that's cool. I love it. I love it when they do that in Doctor Who.
The sad thing, though, is that this action neglected Adric's goal of trying to save the ship.
So the Doctor just sent him to his death.
Unintentionally. But
yeah,
basically, doing this neglected the Earth's need to be rescued. So Adric, he's unable to stop the ship from crashing. So in his final moments, he dies, never knowing if he could have saved the planet. And in his final moments, he's shown clutching the belt of his brother close to him as he watches his impending fate come forward.
Jesus Christ. The Doctor Who is fucking traumatic, man.
So in short, Adric died trying to stop a ship from crashing into Earth, unaware that due to the Doctor's actions in unintentional actions, he ended up sending the ship back in time. Or now that I remember it, actually, never mind. The point is, the ship got sent back in time, and it ended up becoming the asteroid that devastates the Earth and kills off the dinosaurs. So that basically saves the Earth, but Adric
kills the fucking dinosaurs. Yeah, I mean, and he does, and the Doctor does commit genocide. But don't that bit is so. Is that saying basically if he didn't do that, then there still would be dinosaurs?
I guess, yeah.
Because what happened to the meteor? There wasn't one. That was the meteor. Jesus Christ! The Doctor Who makes the Doctor a fucking serial killer. With that and Pompeii, I'm sure he could have stopped Hitler. Jesus Christ! I guess they're fixed points though, aren't they?
Now remembering it, I'm sure there was alternatives. I think it actually might have been Adric and some of the other characters, scientist characters on the ship as well, who might have had some involvement in the ship's time travel escapade. But I just got in my head that the Doctor basically set in motion the ship's ability to travel or something. Again, it's been a while. As much as I know about it, it has been a while since I actually watched the episodes myself. But I do know for a fact that the ship is sent back in time. It ensures the Earth is saved. But because of this action, Adric ends up dying. And this is a death that is memorable because it was a surprise. Unlike modern TV, where it's almost in advance, the actor's moving on to other stuff.
I really hate that.
New show.
Yeah.
yeah. Adric's death was not broadcasted to the audience in advance, and also this story was notable because, and again, context. This story was called Earthshock, and this story aired 7 years since the Cybermen had been featured on TV since their last appearance. So the return of the Cybermen was a big thing, and then to then end that story with one of the long-standing companions being killed off, it was something.
Sounds familiar to me, but I think we'll get into it later. I'm talking about Bill. It's Bill. That's what happened to Bill. Yeah, well, I mean that does sound really cool. Like I do love it when Doctor Who sort of meddles with history to make sense within the story. But yeah, it's when they do like sort of not bittersweet, but like retroactive, like oh, like things could have been different sort of thing, and it like really sort of gets that sort of resonates, and I think that's probably why that's one of the more memorable ones, or one of the only memorable ones, because it's like really like heart wrenching, because it's like the Doctor did save him, but he didn't know that. I think that's just quite cool.
So the next one is sort of going backwards, like the first two, because this is a character who was very short-lived on the show, and this was a companion called Kamelion. And unlike the other ones, he was an android, and his standout thing was that he had the ability to shape change into anyone. And in not so many words, this is a character who was introduced in a master story, who was part of his plan to basically try and defeat the Doctor in his own mind game. And but the Doctor stopped him, of course. And what happened in the end was that the Doctor offered Kamelion the chance to travel with him in the TARDIS, and Kamelion accepted. However, narrative-wise, he decides to stay on board the TARDIS constantly because he is too much of a liability. Because essentially, he's easy to be, um, what's the word, incapacitated. Basically, he's easy to be taken over by external forces. So he decided to stay in the TARDIS and sort of, because he's a robot, basically experience the adventures of the Doctor. What's the word? Experience the traveling remotely is one way of saying it, I guess.
Sure, he
But
was
yeah,
watching Doctor. He ended by watching Doctor Who.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was literally his contribution to the story. He's in his first episode. He's absent for like 4 to 6 serials, and then he's back in like another episode as if he's always been there. He's just been in his room, just doing
Yeah,
doing whatever.
just watching
But
streaming.
yeah, he got Netflix before Netflix was Netflix. But yeah, so what happened is that he ends up again when he returns in his second official episode. That it's another master story. So the master regains control of him, and in the end, he's left in agony. And the Doctor, who's there with him, he begs the Doctor to destroy him. So the Doctor sadly obliges, and he kills Kamelion. So yeah, this companion is again sort of like the other ones, very short-lived, wasn't used much for narrative purposes, and the reason why, again behind the scenes wise, the reason why this character was hardly utilized a lot is because it was actually because the prop of him as it being a robot, because I think it was a man in a suit. No, I tell a lie. It was actually a full-on model like K9,
Mm,
but because this is the 80s and this is also the BBC we're talking about.
yeah.
They weren't renowned for their budget. It was extremely difficult for them to maneuver and work with. Even Peter Davidson, the actor who played the Fifth Doctor, he admitted that when they filmed Camelion's death scene, all the acting he did, where he was very anguished about being the one to kill Kamelion, he said, "Oh, that's just genuinely me just acting because I was so glad to be rid of that bloody thing."
Yeah, yeah. How did he die?
The Doctor basically takes the Master's tissue compression eliminator and uses it on Kamelion, so he gets shrunken down to a doll, and
Mm,
basically again, I'm blanking on how it kills people, but I think it's meant to like shatter your organs or something, and
sure.
basically like it shattered Kamelion.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
and
Put
yeah,
it basically put it basically like putting a tin can in one of those compressors.
kind of, yeah, and yeah. I guess the only highlight for this companion is that aside from not being human, this is notable because unlike the other companions, where the Doctor was like involuntarily, responsible for their deaths. This is the case. This is one of the few cases where the Doctor is generally like hands on the one who ends up killing
Mm.
his companion. So that's something to be note of.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much the list we have here for classic companions who have died. I'm sure there's like a few more. I do know there's spin-off material from like books and novels where they detail the deaths of other companions. I'm sure Liz Shaw is in there somewhere, and even Joe Grant, which I'm so glad is contradicted by the TV show
Yeah, I was gonna
because
say
she's an amazing
she's still
character.
alive.
Yeah, thank God.
She was in the most
But
recent episode of Doctor Who
yeah,
to as the time of
but
recording.
yeah, yeah. But in terms of broadcasting, story canon, these are the characters that have been with the Doctor. Some for a long period of time, some for a short period of time, some who have not even like travelled in the TARDIS, but they have notably died, and we have never seen them again. And so, moving on now to modern companions, and again,
Right.
unlike classic, we pretty much know a lot about these ones. Again, I apologize if you somehow don't know anything about New Who.
Oh yeah.
Where have you been?
Spoilers. Yeah.
But yeah, we're not going to go into too much depth because we already know these ones. But in short, the notable ones I can highlight is that we have River Song,
Yeah.
who again she met the Doctor out of order. She's been in several adventures with the Doctor throughout several generations, but she's notable because her first appearance she died, and
Mm.
there's a timey-wimey thing where she comes back even after her death, but in terms of like genuine death, she is dead.
Yeah.
So
That's the end. Yeah, and she
yeah,
gets to go to computer heaven or whatever it is. Actually, there's two sort of theories. I think I might talk about one of them before, but about the River Song specifically, that it's not really related to her death. One of them is. Actually, both are. They're both related to her death. So you know how the person who like saves her, well, the Doctor saves her obviously, but you know how the person who like greets her in heaven is Doctor Moon.
mhm.
Yeah. So I think Stephen Moffat, and we might have said this before, has said that Doctor Moon in the earlier version of the script, or like in his head canon, was actually a future incarnation of the Doctor. Um, and I just think that'd be a cool way to sort of have a new Doctor be that guy retroactively. So like a new regeneration is like, oh, I'm the one that has to save River, as well as my past self. Um, and the other sort of thing this is actually a really new theory. So you know how River, when she sees the Doctor, for the first, or when David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, meets River for the first time, River already knows about the Doctor, and like she's like, oh yeah, this is my guy. I think I saw the theory. I don't know if I've made this up, or I think I have seen this somewhere else. I don't think it was my idea. But maybe she could meet the 14th Doctor, played by David Tennant, because it's supposed to be the 14th Doctor is the 10th Doctor, just again. And River seems to have seen this Doctor before, but we never see the 10th Doctor have another adventure with her, unless, like, in show canon. I mean, I'm sure there's, like, Big Finish where they meet, but, like, if we have a newer one where the Doctor knows River and she knows him, then it would make sense for when she actually comes into the show for the first time and meets the Doctor, where she knows who he is but he doesn't know her. It sort of adds a sort of a connecting like dot to it.
I think that'd be interesting. I mean, I feel like that sounds like a theory for dating this video here. This sounds like a theory from 2023, purely off hearing that because of the fact that we've got David Tennant coming back in the 60th specials,
Yeah.
and it's I'm not gonna lie. It's not out of possibility to imagine that one of those three specials could include River.
I mean, I think
I,
it'd be cool.
I think it would be. I mean, I'm not clamoring for River to return, but if there was any point where I could imagine her coming back, at least for maybe like a short episode, or maybe at the very least in a way where they at least acknowledge that bit of canon that can sort of tidy things up, she could
Yeah,
be in.
and
She
and
could
it
be
won't
featured.
and it won't have like brought her back to life because it'd be a past version of her that we haven't seen before, but like not so past that it's the first time she becomes River, like in the Matt Smith episode. It'd be like middle of the road River when she's sort of at her like peak, basically.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
There
So
you
yeah, moving on from River. Yeah, so she's got an ending,
go.
and even though she could come back, bearing the circumstance, it's like generally accepted that yeah, she can't come back forever, and she does have a definite end.
Hmm.
So we can note that.
I mean, you can bring her back whenever. It's just it will be before she dies, because it's supposed to
Yeah.
be out of order. So that's just a way of bringing her back whenever. I guess that's like a way that I don't mind when the character is dead but is brought back, because in the story she it's just a past version that's out of sync.
Mm. But yeah, moving on to the next character. This is a character that I think, if you asked me this like last year or early last year before we even knew anything about the 60th, I would have said this is a character who is, by all things considered, this character is dead. And this would be Donna Noble. Because
What?
while she is technically alive, the Doctor was forced to take away all of her memories of being his companion to save her life. Because she was the Doctor Donna, and that was like killing her human brain. It couldn't comprehend all that knowledge and that power of a Time Lord. So through circumstances, he had to force her to forget him, which in of itself is a death. Because again,
Yeah, well
all
the
we are is
character, like
memories.
the character development is all gone. So like basically the character is dead, right?
Essentially, I mean, the Doctor himself says that version of Donna is dead. So going forward, this is basically someone else, a complete stranger who's basically had like 4 years of their life like missing,
Hmm.
which is really equally sad. But
Yeah, I mean it is
yeah,
one of the most like sad points in Doctor Who is when he's wiped a memory and he's like in the rain with her like sort of unconscious body being like help me, and it's like oh man. But yeah,
yeah,
man, that's that sort of stuff, man.
Donna is my favorite companion, and
Yeah.
primarily she's just one of those companions who worked so well with the Doctor. She was literally his best friend, and I think what adds to that, or what her likability, other than just being a fun character and a very relatable character, is also her ending. Because again, that is such a cruel fate to have, but again, it works for the world of Doctor Who, and
Mm.
if anything, it does show the consequences of such a lifestyle. Because we've had Rose before who fell in love with the Doctor, but was forced to like leave him because of being stuck in a parallel universe. But I think this hits a bit more home because it's a friend. It's a bit different from a crush or someone you like in Rose's case. With Donna, this is someone who the Doctor viewed as a really close friend, and for Donna's case, this is a man who basically gave her a new lease of life after essentially like losing. Well, I wouldn't say losing her ambitions in life, but she was generally like she was at a fresh starting point after her husband basically left her for a giant
Yeah,
spider.
and then died.
So
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So the Doctor definitely gave her like a new goal of like I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna see the world, and that eventually led her back to meeting the Doctor and realizing, yeah, I do want to be your companion. I want to see what's out there. And again, that's a big thing for someone for their life, and
yeah.
yeah, to have that all taken away from you, it's
But then and I think that the way that they handle that at the end is it might be even more painful than a death for the Doctor and everyone else's point of view, because Wilf and Wilf even says it. He says like you were better, she was better when she was with you, and now that's all gone. So it's, in a way, it is like a worse fate that like she and as well, like as you were saying about Rose, it's not the fact that that was just like Rose was taken away, she was forced away because of what circumstances. The Doctor had to make a choice to either kill her permanently or like let her die because her brain was about to, implode or whatever it was, because she couldn't, like a human brain couldn't comprehend a Time Lord mind. It was either kill her that way or completely wipe her memory of anything that they've ever done, and yeah, like you said, kill what she was. So it is heart wrenching, more so than a straight up death would have been.
Mm. Yeah, so that is where we would end it, because again, this is a character who's got, I would say, a definitive ending and a definitive death. However, again, dating this video, in light of the fact that we do know that Donna will be coming back for the 60th, it's generally, again, we don't know for sure because we're still unaware of any plot details for the
Yeah.
specials, but it's generally accepted that Donna will be working alongside the Doctor for the three specials, and the fact that we've seen filming footage of her exiting the TARDIS, it shows that in some form she's going to either remember him or she maybe already remembers him, again, depending on how things play out in the specials.
Well, you can
And
see in the trailer that there's like a comedy bit that looks really. It looks like it's going to be really funny. But it's when the Donna says a skinny man, and she's pointing at the Doctor, clearly not knowing who he is, and Sylvia's like, "Oh, you can't see him; he's not there." It's a really funny moment, but that obviously says that it's like, oh, Donna still doesn't know who he is, and they're trying to like hide him from her just in case her head explodes again.
yeah, yeah, but so yeah, in light of that though, that does pose the question now: is that outcome, is that fate for Donna going to be undone? And
I
that's what,
think the way that it's going to end is that they're going to have some sort of sciency reason that she'll remember him, but then by the end of the episode she'll forget again. And like I think the status quo will stay the same. So like I think it will be like everything sort of, I guess, but in a way that sort of renders the whole thing pointless, where like Donna's going to stay the same position that she was in the beginning of the episode at the end, just to keep
maybe.
the like that plot intact.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I hope so. Part of me hopes that that happens, because as much as as
Or what
excited as
what if
I
Donna
am,
dies? What if?
getting to that actually, I'm
Okay,
excited at the thought of seeing Donna again,
yeah,
but
me too.
I also don't want them to undo her story and the perfect ending that she got. So in light of that, I do hope they have the three stories, and then it ends with things like going back where Donna has to once again forget the Doctor, and that's it. And but because of that, because of their interaction and this little adventure they went on, it's the Doctor who will hopefully like go forward remembering this. So in a way, it won't have been in vain. It doesn't like, oh, forget that ever happened, because while Donna will forget, the Doctor won't, and hopefully this will, like, moving forward, affect him going forward into his next incarnation, which I think would be like a good way for it to move forward. But as you mentioned, there has been rumors among the fandom that it's a possibility that Donna could end up actually dying in the end of this anniversary special.
Yeah, I
And
can easily see that happening.
you think so? Because I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I kind of. I kind of don't want it to happen, because I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like
well that yeah, but you don't want any characters though. You don't want, for instance, spoilers for Game of Thrones. You don't want Ned Stark to die at the end of season one. You don't want any character to die if you like them. But I think if they have it where Donna remembers the Doctor at the beginning of the episode, and then all the way through the episode, maybe her brain gets progressively more scrambled and she gets more in pain, and then by the end she actually just dies because she's remembered him and because they go on another adventure.
maybe it would have to depend on the story and if it's impactful, because again, I feel like, as we talked about earlier, there's so much more power in her original outcome, in the fact that she had to lose that part of herself, and go on living. Whereas with if they bring her back and then kill her off officially, it almost kind of feels like it's like, I would say overcompensating, but it just feels like, oh, you're just repeating yourself, but you're doing a bit of an alternative now, even though the original was better. If that makes sense.
I mean, I agree, but like if they do, so something that I thought about for this discussion about companions dying, and I was going to mention it later with some of the Peter Capaldi companions, but I'll mention it here because Donna is an example as well. A good death of a companion, or when it's more resonating, is when there's consequences. When it's not just a character is dead and they come back, or they just die and it's not really impactful. It's if there's a consequence to something happening. Like that's always the best way for stories to happen, is when there's tension and stakes and consequences. So for Donna, like and also you don't want things to just happen and plots to be resolved just easily, because that as well isn't satisfying, and it's not a good story if something is just instantly fixed. But like for instance with Donna, they managed to save the day and kill all the Daleks and do all that because the doctors couldn't do it, but Donna could, because there was this new, she became part of the Doctor, a sort of thing, and like she had his brain in her head, so and because she was a human and Time Lord, she could do all these things, and it's like cool, that's how the day was solved. But the consequence of that was that Donna had to forget everything because of what happened, and it makes it just puts it like it resonates more because the day isn't just solved easily. It's there has been a consequence. And what they could do for the new one is that the consequence of her remembering everything is that she dies. So that's what the consequence of if she can remember again, because like we don't want this nice ending to be like ruined with the 60th, but there has to be some sort of consequence that happens, and I think RTD is quite good at that. So we only just have to see.
Okay, not gonna lie, you've actually sold me on that idea now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it literally is like with some companions we'll talk about in a minute. There's not consequences, or some of them there are consequences, and it's like, and you can easily see what's a more poignant death because of the consequences that happen. So we'll talk about them now.
Yeah. So moving on from Donna, we've the next two we're going to bunch together because they are essentially a duo.
Yeah.
It's Amy and Rory.
Yeah.
And in short, yeah, we all know them. They're the famous companions of the 11th Doctor. They're River's parents, and by all accounts, Amy and Rory. They are the Doctor's mother-in-law and father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what's great about them is that they're, out of all these characters here who are on the death list, I actually don't mind their outcome, even though I will, again, we'll touch on this later. They are sort of part of the problem with the era of companions and their fates. But yeah, to the point now, I like their outcome where they, in Amy's case, she grew up knowing the Doctor from her youth, and when they met up again when they were adults, they went on to travel together, and the trio became like this unit of friends and a family, and it was like the best of both worlds when it came to companions and dynamics. They were such fun to watch in their time together, and so when the time came for them to die or to leave the show, it was sad, and of course, being a Stephen Moffat way, he found a way to have them leave the show, but also make it bittersweet, but in a way nice. Because again, for context, if you somehow don't know, but again, whatever, they get, Rory gets sent back in time by a Whooping Angel, and Amy, not wanting to lose her husband, decides to let the angel touch her, and they live out the rest of their lives in the 1920s in New York, and they basically live a life in the past until they die of old age. So, by all accounts, they do die, but they are able to live out a life with together and they have a family. They have a kid, and yeah, that's their story. They leave the life of an adventurer behind so they can be together.
I like I like how they die. Like I like that it's one of the Stephen Moffat's like most iconic villain that he's invented, the Weeping Angel. It's nice that a companion has actually died that way. But it makes it is nice that they get to live together because the same angel touched both of them. So they both got sent to the same point, so they can live together. But then the way that Weeping Angel works is that they would then die by the time the event happens, so that the Weeping Angel gets the power from them, or that's how they harness their energy. So it is cool that that's how they die. But with regards to those two characters, their death isn't one of my favourite parts because the whole story was about them dying. It wasn't their death was a consequence of me and my consequences. Their death wasn't a consequence of something. Their death just happened in the story. Like there wasn't an outcome that happened because they died, or like they sacrificed themselves, or it just the story happened, it finished, and then they died. That is literally how it happened, because if that Weeping Angel wasn't there, they wouldn't have died, and it would have been fine. It just there happened to be a Weeping Angel. So their death isn't one of my favourites, and I kind of forget that it happens sometimes, because it's just like the last episode is like Weeping Angels, and then they're not there anymore. But it's because they died, and but they didn't, like you said, they didn't initially just die. They had a happy life, so it's not like it's heart wrenching, to me at least.
Yeah. If anything, I feel like their ending is more. It's almost safe in a way, in a Stephen Moffat way, because they were his first like companions under his era, so he clearly had a lot of sentimental value to them. So I imagined he probably wasn't looking at this from a big overarching character narrative. He was more looking at this as, how can I let them leave in the most heart wrenching, but also like I wouldn't say soothing, but kindest kind of way. So he probably thought, okay, let's let them still be together in the end, still live a life, but they'll never be able to see the Doctor again. And in some ways, that is a lot more harsher. But yeah, I do agree. In terms of consequence, it's the entire episode doesn't really. Yeah, there's not a lot of bigger consequences to them leaving.
There isn't really, is there? But I was just thinking about it, and all of Moffat's companions had the same exit. They died, then they didn't die, then they lived. That's literally all of the companions. They died, but then they didn't, and then they lived. All three of them, the main companions of the Moffat era, had the same death, in a way. No. Not the exact same way of dying, but the same event. The same process of how they died. All the same for all three of them. And that's what I don't like it, because there's we'll get to Clara and Bill.
I think the only other thing to add on for the Amy and Rory is that in Rory's case, he died multiple times.
Yeah, we can't talk about companion death without mentioning Rory. He's literally the dead companion.
Yeah, and I'll give them this. It was definitely different. I mean, if anything, I was surprised that they killed him off the first time, because I generally thought, oh shit, are they actually going to do a consequence of Amy traveling with the Doctor? And one of those is like, oh, you can't choose between a normal life and the life of the Doctor, and it shows through that action, because we've never seen a companion's family member, or in her case, like romantic partner, be killed in such a big way. And because again, if they hadn't gone traveling with the Doctor, that wouldn't have happened. But yeah, again, being Moffat, he decided he had long-term plans for them, so he brought him back. And I don't know why, for some reason, as his time went on the show, they just put Rory in so many situations where he ended up dying or almost dying.
Yeah, I kind of like that though. Like, because Rory wasn't the main companion, it was Amy. So to have like a side character there, their whole thing was they kept dying. I think that's quite fun.
In a way,
but then towards the end, it didn't really,
Yeah, I think
I don't know where that was going.
It was around for me. It was around the Doctor's wife that I started to realize, because his death in that is purely just an illusion created. Because for context, people here, he dies in Amy's choice, which is basically a dream world. He then dies officially in cold blood when he's shot by a Silurian. He's in season 6. He's killed. He's almost drowned by in the Curse of the Black Spot, and he's then revived by Amy. And then in the Doctor's Wife, he's again, an illusion of him is created by the entity House to basically taunt Amy. But it was around the Doctor's Wife that I remember specifically feeling like, okay, come on, how many times has this bastard died? In the next season, I bet he's going to die in every episode. And thankfully that didn't happen. But again, season 7 was his last, and in that one they did gem. And I mean, technically he did. He died twice. He died.
He did, didn't he?
He died as an old man in his bed
in
New York, and then he died officially off screen after he got touched by.
No, 3 times. 3 times. He died as an old man, in the hospital. Then him and Amy jumped off the roof.
Oh yeah,
right. And then he got killed by an angel. He died 3 times.
Yeah.
But about Rory, like I was just thinking about it, and like I don't like the last episode where he died because like I don't like that particular death. But him constantly dying in the show, I do like, because two of the times he sort of dies, they're both dreams that Amy has had, and they both say that because he's dead now, her life is ruined, and I like that element because it's sort of, because I've always felt that Amy and Rory's relationship is like a bit rocky, and that's the point. And like, but I've never sort of believed that they were like supposed to be together forever. But like those times sort of like kind of solidified that they're like the best couple. Well, not the best couple, but they're like a good couple together, because if he dies, that Amy's life is ruined, and I like that. And then I like it in season 5 when he dies and then is resurrected, because he's it's not like he's dead and then they're like, oh, let's bring him back later. He died on purpose, and he was brought back when he died. He was killed knowing he'd be brought back in a clever way, and I like how he was brought back. He was brought back as a plastic man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the last time he dies where I'm not a big fan of it, because it, like I said, it doesn't really matter in a harsh way.
Yeah. Just for context, just so everyone knows, bit of a notice here. It's raining from my end, so you might hear a bit of an audio patter, but hopefully you can still hear me clearly. So yeah, back to Rory. I agree. I feel like Rory's early deaths, again, with hindsight, they do have a bit more of a purpose, and that you can look past them about it happening frequently, because the circumstances and also how they impact the other characters are notable. Because again, his first official death is in the dream world, and that is all about Amy realizing that, oh, if I did lose him, I wouldn't break, but I would like feel empty, because I care about him so much, and I didn't realize how much until now. And that was a big thing for Amy. And then to lose him officially in the next episode when he's shot and killed, that definitely, again, it leaves an impact, especially for the characters when they care about them so much. And in Amy's case, the fact that it was also erased from her memory, but even then, she still somewhat remembered him through the ring and through the occasional things the Doctor would say. And even in season 6, I think the best thing about Rory, and one of the most untapped potentials about Rory, was that because he lived such a long time as an Auton, he could almost empathise with the Doctor in a way, who lived such a long life. And he even admits during season 6 when they're trying to save Amy from the silence, that the Doctor asks him occasionally, "Do you still remember what it was like waiting for 2,000 years?" And even though Rory denies it, he's like, "Sometimes I get flashes, memories, moments," and that's something that I kind of wish they had explored more.
He probably has like really good memory, thinking about it, because he just has a plastic brain.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that they should have explored a bit more with Rory, which is a shame they didn't. But again, I'm sure Big Finish will jump on that if they can.
I mean, I'm sure Arthur Darvill will be fine with it.
Yeah, but yeah, moving on from Rory. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's notable that he died a lot, so that actually contributed to how we'll feel on these next 2 companions. Now, the next companion who died, no shocker here for anyone who knows New Who, it's Clara Oswald. So Yeah, for sure. Again, short and sweet because I think been made clear over these last 5 years. I am not the biggest fan of this character, and
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, I really loved her death.
Which one?
she, well,
She died.
her
She
official
died
death.
a million times. You mean the Heaven Sent Hellbent? No,
Yes,
the Raven. Face the Raven. That's the one it's called.
yeah.
Yeah.
She ends up getting too cocky, and she basically takes on I think it's the Chrono Loop or something. But basically, she basically takes the place of Rigsy to be killed by the Quantum Shade, which is an entity that seeks out its prey by having a mark embedded on their skin. She ends up taking on this mark, and because of the circumstances, she's unable to get it off, and the Doctor was unable to do anything. Even the person Shielder, even the person who set it
I
up,
was like,
she's
I was like,
unable to
yeah,
do it.
you didn't do that, Kobe.
Okay, I didn't. Um, but yeah, yeah, she dies that way, and I'm not gonna lie, that death was good because as okay,
I
I'm
didn't
being a
like
bit
it
unkind to
because I just
Clara
didn't care.
because
But go on.
I was just gonna say I am being a bit biased towards Clara because I don't like her as a character. I feel like I might as well get this out now. I think as a character she could have worked, but the problem is that they never really set down the foundation of a character for her because it's well known that Moffat was struggling to set down what she was when he was creating her, because originally he wanted her to be a Victorian governess, and she would just travel from the Doctor afterwards when she was introduced in the Snowmen. But it was not long after that he decided, okay, I should actually tie her into a bigger storyline because it was approaching the 50th anniversary, and he probably was also still somewhat trying to figure out what should I do after Amy and Roy are gone, and how can I make the audience interested, especially if they would probably be very still attached to Amy and Rory leaving. So I guess his alternative was let's just make her a plot device essentially, where she's not really a character in her first season. She's more just a mystery. She's got
A
quirks and
question.
such, but she's mostly just a question that the Doctor has to try and
Yeah.
figure out. And that didn't that it left a lot of to be desired for her as a character because again I liked her in her first appearance as the governess, but as a normal modern day contemporary 21st century companion, she was very boring. And it also didn't help that they also fed into the idea that she might fancy the Doctor, she might
Yeah.
she's part of a mystery, like River Song. It's like, you're treading ground here. It's like getting real close. Please don't. And
Yeah,
in the
and
end, the
Martha as well, where
resolution,
Martha fancied the Doctor the whole time.
yeah, and the resolution, I'll give them this. It was shocking. It was definitely a big thing in terms of lore, and also finding out about the War Doctor. But again, even that, it somewhat leaves a lot to be desired because I think the main thing is just we don't see them exit the Doctor's time stream. We don't see him and her react to the revelations that she splintered herself throughout his timeline. And in terms
Yeah,
of consequence,
there was no. Oh yes, I was about to say there's no consequences for what happened to her. She was like, yep, that's fine. I did that, and now I'm okay again.
yeah, and in terms of the lore, the wider lore of Doctor Who, I feel like Moffat gave her too much baggage in the worst way because again, when she steps into the timeline, she basically allows herself to save the Doctor at various points throughout his lives, and that would be one thing. I think if she had just said, "Oh, there were like 12 to 11 times in your lifetime where you would have died if it wasn't for me," but the fact that it's made clear that she's seen the Doctor at multiple points throughout his life and also influenced him. I feel like it went a step too far in basically having the Clara basically be responsible for the Doctor as a character, and that I feel like that again that takes away a lot from the Doctor. Like the fact that she's the one who encourages him to take the right TARDIS, and moving forward into season 8, the fact that she's the one who encourages the Doctor to not be afraid of the dark, don't be afraid of
Yeah,
fear and death. It's like again in isolation, these moments are probably very nice. They are nice. They're very memorable and sweet, but in terms of the narrative for the Doctor as a character, it feels like you are giving this character, who honestly has not a lot of character or interest to herself, you're giving her too much baggage, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, I just you saying all that sort of stuff. I really wish retroactively Clara had for her first season was an entire season and not just half a season like what she had. If it was an entire season where she had a character, or like, because I quite like Clara, because like Clara sort of like with Matt Smith, I really liked how their sort of dynamic. So I didn't really mind Clara. So I guess Clara in her first season, if she was a bit like gave her some more stuff to do, and had a whole season, and like the question was like, oh, how has this person died a couple of times? What's happening? Cool, it's a cool concept. And then at the end, they're at Trenzalore and she steps into his timeline. They're, great intelligence, whatever. I didn't really like that character, but if she went into his timeline to save him, and that was her and because of what happened, she split herself up into all these different fragments and saved the Doctor, and instantly died. Like, she sacrificed herself to kill the Doctor, and then she died. Like, the actual Clara died. Wouldn't that have been such a more prominent and more memorable, and made her more likable? Because there would have been a consequence. The consequence of her splitting herself up and going into his timeline is that she died. Would have been, and then that was it. And then no more Clara. Wouldn't that have been a much better conclusion to that character?
Yeah, and you can add to that, actually, what they could have done instead is actually just, she could have still stayed on as a companion for a subsequent season or two, but they could have revealed that, oh, stepping into that time stream, splintering yourself, that had consequences. Maybe that ended up, killing her in the long run, where it's almost like a disease where it's slowly deteriorating her body. So she can still like stay on as a companion, but as the seasons go on, you start to realize, oh, she's acting a lot more weaker in this moment. Oh, she's a bit more pessimistic. It's like, what's
Or
going on
what
here?
if it turned
Are
her
you
into a
hiding
villain?
something?
One of that.
Or that, yeah.
One of that been a great twist, and also like proper. That would be the consequence. It would she would then go against the Doctor, and it would have been such a like a heart wrenching thing. It's like one of the Doctor's best friends, not really, but one of the Doctor's best friends became his mortal enemy. Wouldn't have that been memorable and new?
Yeah, honestly, if in that light, it actually would have made sense for her to have such an impact on the Doctor's life, because again, because we know as in season 8, they sort of establish her to be a bit of a control freak, and that gets ramped up a lot in season 9 when she starts becoming bold and self-sacrificial, trying to be more like the Doctor. So that if they played more into that, where that almost twists her to feel like, oh, I created like you, one of the greatest, the most essentially a god. Well, Doctor's not a god, but a lot of people would say he is. He's like one of those people that is so influential in saving the universe. The fact that Clara would probably have that, she could have had that mindset where she's like, I essentially helped create you, and of course that's not true, but in a way, in a twisted way, it could have been, and that could have gone to her head. And again, considering what the splintering could have done, that could have messed with her. Again, god damn it, I'm really annoyed that this is not canon now.
I know. Whenever we have these chats, we're like, oh, this would be a good idea. God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, going back a bit earlier, when we were talking about Amy and Rory, you actually got me thinking, how cool would it have been if, but in retrospective now, think about me talking about Clara, how cool would it have been if instead of Clara being introduced and taking away the splintering stuff, we just got Sally Sparrow back? Because if you remember, do you remember Sally Sparrow?
Yeah, from Blink.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but originally it was strongly rumoured when Moffat was taking over for Doctor Who that she was going to be the next companion.
Yeah, I do remember that, but it's because of Carrie. Is it Carrie Mulligan, the actor? She was Hollywood famous by that point, so she wouldn't have gone and done Doctor Who.
Nah, but who knows? Maybe if alternatively, maybe Moffat could have gone to her after Amy and Rory departed, and he could have gotten her back somehow as a character.
I mean, that would have been great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that would add in terms of like Clara as a villain or just Clara as a character, but I just feel like, I don't know, maybe considering that character already had a foundation and was very liked by the audience, maybe we could have got a better companion dynamic with the Doctor in terms of just like storytelling wise. Because again, somewhere in there is a good story to tell with Clara. I just feel like it was just poorly handled in the moment because, again, Moffat had to deal with writing the 50th. He had to deal with his two notable companions leaving. He had to do all that and set up a new companion in the span of like half a season. So I can fully understand the pressure to get that right. But I do feel like he, in his Moffat way, overcompensated and ended up making a character
Yeah.
that not everyone is a fan of in my book.
Oh no, yeah, it's true. And before we move on from Clara, the thing about her death is that she didn't die. So
Yeah.
that fucking stupid Raven thing happened. I wasn't a big fan of that. I didn't like that as a concept. But that happened. She died. But then there was 2 episodes after that of the Doctor bringing her back. So she basically became immortal, and she she flew off in a TARDIS with me. She flew, Maisie Williams. She flew up in a TARDIS with her. To just have her potential spin-off that never happened, that no one ever wanted, with 2 annoying characters. So that was annoying, wasn't it? That she didn't fucking die. There was no fucking consequences for her death because she didn't die.
That was infuriating. I think also the fact, again, we won't get into that bit, it's a whole other can of worms, but also the fact that her involvement in that entire story basically neglected the Gallifrey arc. I mean, that's...
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
We've discussed that, haven't we?
I think we've talked about it briefly, but we're definitely going to talk about that at some point. But
Jesus Christ.
yeah, again, another example with Moffat where he was so... Again, you can joke what you want, but or maybe we're hyping up a bit too much, but I generally do feel like he was so obsessed with his companions, his own creations of companions, that he just didn't want them to suffer. So even though he gave honestly a very good exit, a very memorable exit, and a very dark exit of consequence, he just thought, I can't keep...
Fuck it, no consequences. But he did that with everyone. It's with Rory, like I said, with Rory and Amy, they died, but then they still lived together happily. With River, she died, but then she lived happily in heaven, or whatever that was. And then with Clara, she died, but then she didn't, because she lived happily with me in a TARDIS.
Yeah,
and then on to the next companion we're going to talk about. But I'll say that, after we finish talking about Clara.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more frustrating with Clara because it was also known at the time that Moffat was seriously considering to leave after season 9, which is why, again, it's not officially confirmed, but I feel like it's like sort of accepted that, that's probably why he decided to rush ending the Gallifrey arc, because he wanted to end it on his terms, but he also didn't want to, he wanted to leave. So he decided to wrap it up there and also wrap up Clara's story because, again, he liked the character too much. But that definitely had a knock-on effect because, again, that's an arc that was heavily built up, and in Clara's case, that was a character who had a perfect ending 2 episodes prior. So in turn, it just ended up messing everything up for fans.
Yep. Right. Next Moffat companion.
Yeah. The next companion, Bill Potts.
I love Bill. Sorry. Bill's one of my favourite companions. I just love her.
It's okay. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still refreshed to know that you like her, because I'm sort of in and out of this boat with her, because I still remember her being alright. Because I think the biggest thing I remember about her was that she had a student-teacher relationship with the Doctor, which is what I really liked, cool. Because I really looked for that in a companion after Clara and Amy, and I was really hoping that we would get a companion similar to Jamie McCrimmon, and what we got with Bill I thought was alright, although I still stand by, I think it was ridiculous how in almost all of her episodes they had to highlight that she was gay. And again,
sure.
I can understand why they did it for the time, but at the same time, in terms of in-universe narrative, it just it got really ridiculous. And I actually saw the pilot episode, her debut episode recently, and I still find it odd how, again, her crush Heather is reacting so like mysterious and not. I mean, the fact that she's staring into a puddle, then she just immediately walks away, and it's almost like very sinister. And yet Bill's just like, "Hey, where are you going? We're going to meet up later." It's like, how are you not feeling a bit uncomfortable about any of this?
Yeah. But still, though, I love Yeah, it's true, but I still love Bill, and that sort of stuff never really. I didn't get annoyed by it. It never sort of. I never really noticed it much, but season 10 is still one of my. I think probably one of my top favorite seasons, because it's a solid season, start to finish. There isn't really there's not a really awful dud episode. There's maybe a couple, but like overall, I like most episodes. But her death, well, her first, yeah, her the thing that sort of killed her, in World Enough and Time, was fucking incredible. It really annoys me that it was the same fate that happened to Clara that happened to Bill, that she died in a really fucking cool way, and then was just brought back as an immortal puddle who could fly through the universe. Because her death of becoming a Cyberman, what a good concept for a death of a companion. A companion becoming a Cyberman and getting their humanity stripped away, and essentially being a villain to the Doctor. Amazing. And then her being such a like sort of positive person sort of kept that at bay, but it was like slowly taking her personality away as she was a Cyberman, and like and making a Cyberman character be like on the same side as the Doctor. That was really cool as well. I really love those last two episodes. And like, yeah, her like conversion into a Cyberman was really like gruesome and like like torturous, and then it didn't matter. There was no consequences for her dying because she didn't die.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you said there. It was definitely a great way to handle the character's exit, especially considering, again, there's not a lot of companions we can say on television-wise who've had a fate like that, especially from such a notable antagonist in Doctor Who. Which, again, makes it that much more frustrating when, again, Moffat, he basically repeated himself with his previous two companions where, oh, it's my ending, I'm leaving now. I want this character to have their end too, but I don't want it to be too dark. So let's give her an outing where she again lives a full life still, and then she dies of old age. And again, if this had just been done the one time, we probably would be thinking differently. But the fact that it was such a consistent thing throughout his era,
and even before his era started, like imagine that she. And I guess there's that iconic shot of the Cyberman holding the Doctor when he destroyed everyone. Imagine Bill's death was like John Sims' master actually like used his sonic laser and like blasted her head or heart or whatever, and she just straight up died from him, because he's the reason she was made into a Cyberman. Well, sort of. He sort of helped her or pushed her to become a Cyberman. And then sort of showed it to the Doctor and like, haha, look at your companion, and then him to kill that Cyberman, and then that would be her death. Wouldn't that be so like traumatic? And that's like, and then the Doctor then goes on a rampage and kills everyone and then dies or something. Wouldn't that have been much such a cooler ending?
That sounds like a lot more darker, and I actually am quite for it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, Doctor Who is quite dark. Like the things you've been talking about from the classics, that's all really dark. And those characters didn't come back as immortal beings. they died. That was their end. And that's how I think that's how that should be. A character's death should be their death, and they shouldn't come back. I hate it when that happens in fiction in general, except for Gandalf or Harry Potter. Whenever there's an actual really clever reason for a character coming back, then sure, that's fine. But when it's just like, oh shit, we don't want this companion to be dead forever, so we're going to give them a way of them coming back instantly. It's like, come on now.
Yeah. So moving on from Bill, we've just got a few honourable mentions, and these are ones that again we'll just list off.
Yeah.
K9 Mark III. He technically wasn't a companion, but he technically was. All things considered, he was more of a Sarah Jane's companion rather. But he did die on an adventure helping the Doctor. But again, equally, he also didn't die because his memories were given to K9 Mark IV. But I thought I'd just highlight that he was technically considered a companion who died.
Oh,
there's also
sure.
Astrid Peth.
Yep. The
And
consequence of there was consequence. It's the same thing again, wasn't it? Though for her, she died by saving the day, and the consequence of that was. Oh, sorry, she saved the day. The consequence of that was she died, but then she became stars and flew into the universe. Come on, just kill them. Come back as like immortal souls. Christ.
Yeah, to be fair, that was always a one-off companion, and that was under Russell, so it wasn't as like a consistent thing at the time. So we could look past that.
Yeah, I didn't really mind it. It was quite nice.
Yeah, and out of all the notable ones, we've got Adelaide Brooke, who I think is the most notable, just because in terms of her deaths, she actually kills herself willingly.
Yeah, brutal.
You've changed history of your own agenda, and that's gonna have dire consequences for the universe. And I'm not going to let that happen to my family, to my future generations. I'm not gonna let you decide my fate. So she has to. She takes that cruel step, but she kills herself, and that basically snaps the Doctor out of his mindset of accepting this mantle of the time victorious. And that is it's such a notable episode, because not only is that an amazing episode of itself, but the fact that that character who only travelled in the TARDIS that one time and saw the consequences of what would happen if the Doctor became this omnipotent being deciding the fate of the universe for himself. Again, you've talked about a few times throughout this episode, consequences, they leave an impact, and that definitely left an impact for the 10th Doctor.
That was a really good character, because also it's a really memorable character, Adelaide Brooke, and then her death is really like sort of surprising and startling, because it's like you think that the day is saved, and this really sort of dark episode has sort of ended on a light note of the Doctor saving on, but then she's like, "Fuck, this was fucked up. You should be able to do this," and then she killed herself. It's like, Jesus Christ, that is deep stuff.
Yeah. So, in final segment discussion piece. So, the whole point of all these highlights was to show that it's not been a consistent thing among Doctor Who, because Doctor Who at its heart was a show about family, adventure, history, and it was only until during like the last season of Doctor Who, during its classic run, and predominantly during the new era of Who, where they've taken storytelling. Well, in terms of grand storytelling, they've definitely upped the narratives and the character development a lot more during modern Doctor Who. Is what I was going to say.
Oh, sure.
And it's during that period where the writers have definitely had to try and make the characters, memorable, clever, smart, interesting, and especially when it comes to their exits, they've had to make them different and also, again, have meaning. And when it comes to Moffat, I do think he is the most egregious run right now, who just made this trend on, and almost and pretty much a joke among the fandom, where no one ever really dies. And it is such a shame, because again, if you look at his concepts and ideas, they are great and they could have worked, and they do work in a way, but again, it does have a knock-on effect with how the audience views characters and the consequences of the universe. Because again, the fact that we've had like technically five characters of companions basically cheat death in a way by still having a happy ending, it's just, again, as we've talked about quite a few times, it really does show in the impact for the audience. Because sure, we might be like in the moment, oh thank God they had a happy ending, but then you think, oh, but
I don't think
the same.
Anyone I know who's like Doctor Who, I don't think anyone has liked the ending that Clara and Bill had specific, like especially because with Amy and Rory, it's like, yeah, they actually did die. Like they had a gravestone, they died, but they just had a sort of a longer death living together. That's like fair enough. But yeah, with Clara and Bill, I don't think anyone actually likes the fact that they didn't die. I don't know if there is anyone that's like, oh yeah, I'm glad that they're now immortal beings flying through the universe. I don't know if anyone likes that.
No, I would say they don't. But primarily because, in Clara's case, her entire purpose was undermining a better storyline, and it was very clear case of Moffat just being greedy. And with Bill's case, it again sort of a similar thing where it was Moffat's last season, it was also his character, and I don't know for sure if he didn't even plan out the Christmas special that was to follow afterwards, which is maybe why he also decided to keep her alive a bit longer, because
Yeah,
even when you watch that story,
with that
it's
he
sort of
didn't. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, if you watch the Peter Capaldi's last story, with the way it's set up, when with the Testament, it's almost implying that we're going to have the Doctor meet Susan again, which would make sense considering the first Doctor is there, and the Testament was to take the form of, I think, again, I'm blanking on what it says, but I think it was meant to be someone the Doctor trusted or trusted the most at the time or something. So the setup was there for Susan to come back, but Moffat chose to bring Bill back because, again, she was the recent companion. She was the character that he created. But yeah, I feel like I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but essentially, I agree that the decision to give these characters essentially the same outcome where they die but they don't die. It makes the world feel that bit less real
Yeah, it
because
makes it feel flat a bit.
Yeah, and again, considering this past year we had with Jodie Whittaker, the fact that no companions died and they just
they all just left. Yeah, they were just like, yeah, I've had enough. Goodbye, and that was all of them.
Yeah,
every single one of them.
Yeah, it's just like, again, add on that they weren't interesting or didn't have the same amount of development. It just adds another pile of dissatisfaction to the fans of how the brand's been treated right now, because we know from the Russell T Davies era that we can get characters who have darker outcomes or sadder outcomes, but also still have better or lighter outcomes, because we're not against that. I think the main thing right now is just as much as we would like things to be optimistic and hopeful, because it is good to have that mentality, real life isn't like that. Real life has consequences. Real life has dark outcomes for people who make a wrong choice, or a choice that's might be beneficial in the moment, but it could have a consequence that could decide their fate or someone else's fate. And when Doctor Who does tap into that, it definitely leaves an impact that is something that we should note of. Because again, we look at all the classic companions who've on this list who had such a dark outcome, and we've never seen them again, because that shows that that happened, and that's permanent. You can't fix that with time travel. I mean, technically, again, it's Doctor Who, so you could, but in terms of their life, we can't see them after that. We can't see them, what would have happened to them after those events. We can go back and see them maybe prior to those events, but it's not the same. With these recent ones, though, again, it's like it just doesn't have the same whoosh.
Yeah, nothing is permanent, and anyone can come back, because no one actually is ever dead.
I guess as a last discussion point, going a bit full circle here. So with the new companion, Ruby Sunday, again, we still have no idea what she's going to be like. We don't know how she's going to be like with the Doctor. But based off the few behind-the-scenes promos we've seen, it looks like the actors themselves are getting along quite well. So the dynamic will hopefully be nice and wholesome.
Yeah, they have good chemistry, hopefully. Looks like.
So I'm hoping for a good friendship dynamic similar to Donna, which I think would be the best approach to do.
Yeah.
But just throwing our little hat into the ring here, do you think this is a character that we should see suffer a similar fate to these classic companions?
Well, yeah, like we said at the very beginning, to bring it full circle, it matters case to case, doesn't it? So we'll see when it comes along. It depends what Russell wants to do with the story. Maybe she'll be another companion that will be a couple seasons, because RTD hasn't done that, has he? He's always had a companion per season, so maybe he'll stick to that. Oh no, except for Rose. No, Rose didn't do that. Rose stayed on for 2. But like companion and Doctor, same pair. There hasn't been multiple seasons of the same companion and same Doctor. So maybe that'll be the first time he does that, or maybe he has one she's one and done sort of thing. But yeah, it depends if he wants to do that. I mean, maybe she could die, it'd be very sad. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she wants to leave. Maybe they could do something else. I'm sure there's other. I don't think what they've ever done for a companion, which is I've always thought they could do, is like a companion as part of a story has to like sort of grows up, I guess. And like maybe what I always think is like a companion is in the future becomes like a like a warlord, or like a leader of a fleet, or like a sort of like a Doctor-esque character, but in their own right. And that they don't die, but they continue off doing their own adventures because they have become this like hardened soldier type character. So they don't die and they don't leave. They continue doing what they do, but by themselves. I don't think that's ever been done before. I guess with Sarah Jane, sort of, but Sarah Jane was left behind, and it wasn't part of the story that she became, like her, like a alien journalist or whatever she is. But yeah, that like I don't know, maybe like a different ending for a companion, like something new. But he's RTD and he's always doing new stuff, and I don't think he would be coming back if he wasn't doing something new. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against the idea of a companion becoming an antagonist on par with the Master, or into any other long-standing, antagonist who's been around for a long period because of, the circumstances of their ability to last long or just survive. And again, I guess it depends on what story Russell T Davies wants to do with Ruby. I we'll probably talk about what we could expect in a future video, but if I had it my way in this moment right now, I actually wouldn't. I would be open to seeing. Again, I know it's so early to say it, but I actually wouldn't mind it if Ruby's fate is to die, because when you think about it, even with Russell T Davies, he's never officially killed off a companion. Because again, by all accounts, Donna did die, and again Rose, but everyone else, all of his main companions. I think the only, I mean, technically we had Harriet Jones, but she wasn't a companion. But so he's killed off prominent
I
characters
mean,
before, but he's
Captain
never
Jack's
killed
died
off
a
a
bunch of
main
times.
character. Yeah, Captain Jack, but he
Yeah,
died and
we
came
haven't
back.
mentioned him. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No
he's
one's
still
dead in
around,
Doctor
so
Who.
it's like doesn't count, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've never had a mainstay companion of multiple seasons from Russell's era die. So I would be all for a future storyline where maybe Ruby stays around for the entire of Shooty Gatwood's era of the Doctor, or maybe
I hope that doesn't happen, because I didn't like how I wasn't a big fan of how like Clara stayed around for so long and how like Yaz stayed around for so long. I wish they kind of did maybe 2 seasons max, if that, or like 1.5 seasons, like sort of like with Amy, or was Amy 3 seasons? How many did Amy do?
Amy did 2.5.
2.5, yeah, like 1.5. Sure, do that. But yeah, I lost. Where were we going with this point? Oh yeah. What I would actually like from a companion death, if there was a proper death, is, and I always go back in my brain. I'm picturing in Breaking Bad. Spoilers for Breaking Bad. When in Breaking Bad, when Hank gets killed, he gets shot in the head and he's dead, and then it's a shot of Walter like looking just shocked. And I'd love that in Doctor Who. Like, it sounds really depressing, but like if a character died, like it was straight up they were killed. There was no last words. They weren't dying in their arms and they were saying a final quote. They just straight up was killed in a really not horrific because it's a kid show, but like really poignant finality of a death, and the Doctor had to react to it, and it was like proper deep. I'd love that. I know it sounds really horrible and mean, but that would be a really cool thing to add. They might not do it because it is supposed to be sort of lighthearted and for kids. It's for everyone, but like, it is for kids as well. So maybe they might not do that. But I would like a proper death. And I thought we were getting that with Bill initially when she was shot in the chest. I was like, well, she's dead now. But then she was a Cyberman. But then she died still. So, but yeah, I thought it was going to be a straight up death, and I'd love to see a straight up. Someone dies, no final words. The Doctor's like shocked.
I wholeheartedly agree, because going back to what you said about the companions, or the long-lasting ones, I feel like it is possible to have a companion stick around for a long time. It really is just a matter of how they're handled. Because in Clara's case, again, her story started off troubled because of the the lack of character setup and the fact that she was just a plot device, and then the storylines they decided to explore with her were not the best, and also then it was undercut. The fact that her story also undercut the Gallifrey stuff. That entire thing with Clara was just like a mess to begin with, and with I think the most recent example is with Yasmin Khan's case, is that she was just not interesting. They didn't do anything with her as a companion. So the fact that she is like she's been under 3 seasons technically with Jodie's era. The fact that she's considered technically the longest serving companion, I think that was just so annoying because again, under better
It's an insult.
it is an insult because under better circumstances, she would have been like one of the greats. But the fact that she doesn't do anything for 2.5 seasons, and the stuff that they do with her, it's very minuscule, and at most it's very superficial. It's just not entertaining. It's not fun, and it feels like again you're wasting our time. You're wasting the storytelling potential of these characters. So with Ruby's case, I do see the possibility of her sticking around for 3 seasons, or at the very least the entire era of the 15th Doctor. And then in that last season, we can have a death, as you said, where it's final, where this one rogue Cyberman or this one rogue antagonist just shoots her with a laser gun. She like has a brief reaction of just like the fact that that happened, and then she falls over dead in the Doctor's arms, and we can like,
I don't think any reaction at all, though. That's what I mean. I don't think any reaction, just straight up death.
yeah, but yeah, just I mean because they did that with Rory. They can show people getting shot by laser guns, so yeah, I feel like that would be such a great way to, as you said, impactful way to shock the audience and end that character's fate. Yeah, again, it's dark stuff, but again, it's TV. It's you got to have some stuff you got to have an interesting storyline to explore. And if we're talking about a Doctor that's going to be sticking around for at least 3 seasons, or maybe even a bit longer, depending on what Shooty wants to do,
hopefully more.
I could definitely see a 3 season arc where he's with Ruby. He builds this great friendship with her, then she dies. And then maybe if he stick around for 2 more seasons, so he'd get 5 in total, he could have those last 2 seasons basically grappling with himself of, what do I do now? I've lost a great friend, and I can't do anything about that. Do I take on someone else? Do I go solo? Do I risk hunting for revenge? Because again, who's the one that shot her? Who's the one who's responsible?
Yeah.
Is it
that would have been a really cool plot if there's like a death, and then the next season is the Doctor like hunting, like a hunting Doctor season would be really
and
cool.
to add the cherry on top here, what if it was Time Lord related? What if it was a character who had connections to the Doctor through the Time Lords, through the Gallifrey, and that could somehow bring Gallifrey back into the story arc, which is again something I want to happen. There's so much potential you could do with this character, just by through the actions of her death too. So, yeah, that's a bit of a wrap up there. So, who knows yet? For now, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see in 2024, but we can hope for the best.